All right, everyone. Hello. It's good to be back. Let me know if you can hear me. I just had to do an update on the software before I started the stream, and you never know. Um, sometimes you can't hear anything. What is weird? And so yeah, just want to make sure people can hear me, and then I'll begin. Um, all right. So people say they hear me. All right. Cool. All right, folks. Well, basically, I suppose I should start off with kind of my thoughts. Yes, of course, I've heard the news. I know everyone's going to ask me that. Alex, have you heard of the what happened to the submersible that went down to Titanic? Um, and the thing is, yes, I have heard of it. I'm not really going to share my thoughts on it. That's not what I do on this channel. Um, because I feel like it's for me it's not the right thing to do. Um, but I will say that I'm really rooting for them to find the survivors and to bring them back up. Hopefully as soon as possible. So I am absolutely certain that it must be very frightening to be down there. So. But I won't say much more, just that, my thoughts and prayers are with the families of the people who are down there, and that I'm just really hoping that, we'll hear news soon of them being brought back up to the surface, so they could be reunited with their family and everybody. So, but yeah, otherwise, I don't really discuss these kinds of uh, modern events that happen on my channel just for reasons of sensitivity, just my personal feelings of sensitivity. So I will just say that and try to get that, out of the way, because I'm sure everybody wants to know, what I have to say about it. At least on this channel, people want to know. So yeah, but anyway, yeah. So everybody, let's be rooting for them to be found soon and brought back up to be reunited with their families. And otherwise, let us continue on as we normally do. So, in other news, when I was setting up this tea time, I did something really silly, which was, so I had bought all the ingredients to make my cucumber sandwiches, the kinds that people like to watch me, you know, present to them on the plate and stuff like that, and then stuff in my face. Um, but the funny thing was, so I got the ingredients, and then this morning I forgot that today I am doing a tea time stream. Of course, obviously it's been scheduled since yesterday, but I had forgotten that I was doing it. And so when I was looking to have something for lunch or whatever, I was talking to my dad. I'm like, hey, do you want, some lunch? I can order something. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, I'm kind of feeling sandwiches. I'm like, okay, sandwiches sound good. So we got some sub sandwiches from Jersey Mike's. And so I got all full on sandwiches for lunch. And I'm still full from sandwiches. So I was like, oh man, there's no way I can eat another sandwich right now. There's no way. It's just, so, so there's no cucumber sandwich today. Anyway, but I do have these cookies that I baked last night. They're chocolate chip butterscotch cookies. I thought I'd give a new recipe a try. I'm really kind of strange when it comes to cookies. I love chewy cookies and stuff, but when I used to visit Disneyland, they used to sell this cookie in the shops. And I think they still do, but it's not made on property anymore. It's gross. But anyway, they used to sell this cookie at Disneyland when I worked there and when I used to visit. And it was a chocolate chip cookie, but it was almost like scone-like, in a way, an American scone, not a British scone. It kind of broke off in chunks as you ate it. You know, not it wasn't necessarily crunchy, but it wasn't chewy. It was somewhere between crunchy and chewy. And I was like, okay, I love this cookie. And it was, you know, it's just, yeah, I don't want to go off on a tangent about cookies, but, you know, but the thing is that I appear to be the only person that likes that kind of cookie. So when my family eats my cookies, they're like, oh, this isn't really a chocolate chip cookie. It's got to be really chewy. So I don't make those cookies anymore. And I thought I'd try this recipe. And because I also happened to find some butterscotch, like, cookie creams on sale. So I'm like, I'll put this together. And yeah, so I don't like this recipe. I think the butterscotch that I put in it kind of ruins the cookie. It's not butterscotch as you would think of it. It's like it's the same texture as the chocolate chips, and it melts too, like the chocolate chips. But it's flavored like butterscotch, so it just doesn't work. But I mean, they're not terrible. They're just not bad. But Ship Geek says, you worked at Disney? Yes, I used to work at Disneyland. I worked there for 6 years. I did all kinds of jobs, worked my way up to being a guest relations tour guide and private host. That was my favorite part about it, though, because, you know, I got to tour celebrities, I got to host VIPs and stuff like that. Really fun stuff. But, yeah, my tenure with Disney did not end very well. I wasn't very happy working there in the end. But let's preheat some of this china to get the tea brewing, because today we're doing Earl Grey. So let's go ahead and dump half of this out. There we go. Dump half of this out. For those that are new, I've pre-warmed the teapot and teacup by filling them with the hottest tap water I have. And I'm going to do the next phase of preheating by topping them back up with boiling water. Alright. Let that sit for a minute while it warms up. Moonzer asks, will you ever sail the Queen Anne? No, definitely not. I do not like the way that ship looks at all. Hey there, Universal guy. Hey, Jack Bradley. Moonzer says, Alex, can you do a video on the new generation of Cunard ships? No, because my channel is all about steam history. So it's got to be a steamship, mostly. It's got to be history. I think the newest ship I will ever do a video on is the Queen Mary 2, but only because it's the last remaining ocean liner. So I think it deserves a video. You know, but otherwise, it's gonna be about steamships. I'm gonna do one on QE2 as well, because it is, you know, at one point it was the last remaining ocean liner, and it served in the Falklands War. So it, again, deserves a video. But cruise ships, I don't do that on my channel. So, yeah. Mitz Gaming says, what was your job in Disneyland? Well, besides the VIP and tour host, I started there working as a busboy. So I cleaned tables, took out trash, swept the grounds of the restaurant. So I started off in Frontierland working at a restaurant called Riverbell Terrace, which is still there but doesn't serve the same stuff, not even the same style of dining that it used to be. And actually, technically, my first restaurant was the Golden Horseshoe restaurant, which is also in Frontierland. It was in that same area. And over the years, I expanded out. I got bored of working the same location every single day, so I expanded out and got trained for working multiple locations around the park and then soon around the resort. And yeah, and I worked my way up from that to I worked attractions for 1 week. I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. And I went later on into the VIP. Well, actually, you start off in tour guide or guest relations host. And I started off doing that. And believe it or not, in the guest relations department, that's where they also have Lost and Found. So Lost and Found was the first thing I did in guest relations. I loved Lost and Found. Still to this day, I think about that job. I'm like, that was one of the funnest jobs I've ever had, was Lost and Found. Also one of the most boring at times, too. But, yeah, and then, let's see. Yeah, after that, I worked my way up through guest relations department to info booths. I worked at the info booths giving people information, you know, all that kind of stuff, helping them out with things they needed. Working at City Hall, which is at Disneyland City Hall. You know, and then becoming a tour guide and then working my way up to private host. So, pretty cool. Jack Bradley, about your question about White Star Line, I have no idea who that guy is or what he did with White Star Line. Moonzer says, Alex, what if they moved Queen Mary to the UK? You know, honestly, what I care most about is how well the Queen Mary is treated and the condition she's in. I don't care so much about what location she's at. As long as it's easy for a majority of people to get to, you know, hopefully it's not like somewhere like Skagway, Alaska or something where no one can get there. But, you know, as long as it's in a place where people can get to the Queen Mary, can enjoy it, and it's being taken care of properly, that's what I care about, not so much where it's located. But that being said, I think the Queen Mary, the reason why she's lasted this long, despite the neglect, is because of Southern California's weather, which is perfect for preserving a ship because, you know, it's got such mild weather year-round. I mean, granted, it gets unbelievably hot, but mild weather when it comes to humidity and all that kind of stuff, and rain, and, you know, just extreme weather, not so much in Southern California. So that's why the Queen Mary's lasted this long. If she was in the UK with the same kind of neglect, she wouldn't be here today. So that's my concerns, really. Let's see. Hey, Eric, how's it going? Eric says, I took my dad on Timber Mountain log ride. It was the first time in my life. I loved it. He was terrified. That's funny. Eric says, how was your Father's Day? I took my dad to Knott's Berry Farm. Pretty cool. So yeah, my dad, I think, had a really good Father's Day. You know, my sister had kind of revealed that, you know, she's pregnant, so my dad's going to be a grandpa. So he was really, really excited about that. I'm excited to be an uncle. You know, I accidentally found out, actually. That's the funny part, was I found out before my dad by accident because I joke around with my sister a lot. I tease her a lot. And it was kind of funny because, you know, one day she let slip about, you know, she's excited to tell me something in a couple of weeks. And I joke with my sister all the time, but I was like, oh, I know about the baby. And she was like, what? How do you know that? And I'm like, why is she asking me that? And then she called me up immediately. She's like, how do you know about the baby? I'm like, I didn't, but I do now. And so that's how I found out about the baby. And ever since then, I have been completely overjoyed. I cannot stop thinking about being an uncle and all the cool stuff that we're going to do. So, yeah, pretty cool. So my dad had a really cool Father's Day. We took him out to breakfast at a French bakery that we like. It's nothing expensive, actually. It was actually pretty good prices and stuff, but very nice food for the prices. And then for dinner, I made him a tomahawk steak. So if you guys don't know, it's a certain cut from the rib of the beef, and it looks like a tomahawk because the big long bone sticking out. But yeah, I made him a tomahawk steak, which is, I think, the first time I've ever cooked one for him, so he was pretty excited about that. And then I made him potatoes called potatoes lyonnaise. The real French name is pommes lyonnaises. But yeah, it's basically just slices of potato cooked in butter, which is not good for your heart, but very good for your soul. And what was the other side? I made a vegetable of some kind. Don't remember what vegetable I cooked for him. I made something. I can't remember. The only thing I remember from that night is the steak, because I was so full. But yeah. Oh, I should be continuing on with brewing. Just reading through your guys' comments just to see if there's one I can respond to. Eric asks, have you ever been to Knott's Berry Farm? Yes, I have. I'm not a theme park person. Yes, I like Disneyland, or used to like Disneyland. I don't like Disneyland anymore. But I used to like Disneyland. But that was the only theme park I've ever liked, really. I'm not a theme park person. And so, yeah, and I hated Knott's. I hated it. Just, absolutely hated it. But yeah, which is funny because, you know, before I ever covered ocean liners and stuff on this channel, I used to cover only Disneyland history. And people were always recommending, like, oh, why don't you do this theme park or that theme park? And I'm like, I hate theme parks. I'm just not a theme park person. But now Disneyland to me is just low quality, unrecognizable, and overpriced. You know, not the admission. The admission I understand because I worked there and I knew what it was like for the gates to be full at 10 a.m. and having to close the gates on people who waited forever to get in the park and then they couldn't. So I know why they need to charge high admission prices. What I don't understand is charging like $20-something for a hamburger that tastes like a foot. I'm like, you know, that doesn't, no, you know, like, I'm not doing that. So, and then the merchandise. When I was a kid, I used to love the merchandise at Disneyland because they sold all kinds of unique items. So $4.25. So they sold all kinds of unique items when I was a kid. There were like shops where you could get stuff that you couldn't get anywhere else in the world. But every shop in Disneyland now is like, it's like every other shop. Honestly, it's like you can find a sweater at practically every shop. You can find a coffee mug at every shop. It's all the same now. There used to be an antique shop in New Orleans Square when I was a kid, and it was really cool. They sold authentic antiques, and it's not there anymore. Now they sell like stuff from Pirates of the Caribbean there. So it's just not anything like I used to like when I was a kid. Historic ships. To say, Alex, do you know what sections of the Queen Mary are blocked off? Okay, so going by what was open in 2019, I can tell you that what's currently blocked off is the sun deck, the sports deck, the stern, the forecastle deck at the bow, and the isolation ward, which is part of the stern, and the first class swimming pool, which has been closed since, I think, 2015. And then, of course, a lot of the lounges and smoking rooms that used to be open aboard the ship, those are usually closed for special events or banquets, or just closed for no reason. So expect those to be closed, unfortunately. So yeah, there really isn't. Yeah, I mean, the better question is what's open, honestly. So yeah. Mike says, why did you stop working at Disneyland? Well, there were several reasons. One, I was not very happy. I'll be totally honest. Working at Disneyland, you start to realize that they don't really hire professionals to do stuff. Like, I've worked at a lot of different places. And let's say a manager quits, right? And then you need a new manager. Well, what happens at a normal business is a normal business goes, okay, well, let's, find the best manager off the street, the best person who comes in, applies for the job, and is most qualified for this job, right? They go, okay, we will seek out the most qualified candidate to be the new manager of this place. That's what a normal business does. What they do at Disneyland is if there's a manager position to fill, they look for some kid who is like the best out of the group of kids, and then they like promote them to manager. And usually it's not even based off of like how qualified they are for the job. It's really more like, are they friends with the current management team? And then that's who they promote. And so basically your managers, no matter how old they are, were at one point in your position, and they were just promoted because they were the best out of the bunch, not the most qualified. And so you start to realize that that's how the park is run, and it gets really annoying because you could be more qualified than somebody and they are still your manager, Which, I mean, that aspect, yeah, that exists outside of Disneyland too, working for somebody who is less qualified than you. But when you have a system that only promotes, young men and women and promotes them to higher-ups, that's a bad formula, in my opinion. So there was a lot of abrasiveness I had for the management there. They made a lot of, when I went to culinary school during my time at Disney to learn how to cook and the science of food and diets, and then, to learn how to become a chef, so that way one day when I had my own kitchen and I was a chef, I would be well prepared for it. And then working at foods at Disneyland, I worked at the Blue Bayou restaurant. I worked at Club 33, which is a really a club you can't easily get into, and you start to realize how underqualified everybody in your management is, and the dumb decisions they make on a day-to-day basis. And then when you try to like offer a suggestion, like a normal suggestion that is used, like technique that is used around the world at every other business, they look at you like you're insane and you shouldn't have suggested it. I hated that. Anyway, but at the same time, while I was working at Disney, I was at that moment working with a personal friend of mine to open up our own cafe. We started off, before we opened our own, we were hired by somebody to open their cafe. My business partner did the coffee and management. I did the food, and I was the chef, and I taught the whole staff how to cook and how to make all the stuff that the owner wanted. And then after we opened that place, my partner and I moved to opening up our own place. And our place, we successfully had that business for 4 years up until the pandemic, and the pandemic forced us to close down because we just couldn't afford to stay open. So, and then my life kind of changed after that, and I haven't looked back since. So that's kind of where I went with that. Doc says, "Hi Alex, my inner archivist is coming out. I was wondering what resources you and others use to research the shops and goods and wares sold on Queen Mary. Are there lots of photos or items left that were purchased?" Ooh. Researching shops, goods, and wares. Well, if you mean individually stuff, like if you're like, oh, I want to find a certain plate that was sold on the Queen Mary, that might be harder to do. You might need to find someone who's specifically been obsessed with learning about what was sold in these shops. However, if you want to know about the shops themselves, a lot of that information is online. I've learned my information about what shops were on the Queen Mary through the friends I've made, the historians. So I've had, Steve Ablonsi, who's on this channel. He's a Queen Mary and maritime historian. And his friend, who's also now my friend, Rob Jacobs, who is, I would say, like, even more knowledgeable than Steve Ablonsi. is about the Queen Mary, and he helps us a lot. And so through them, I've learned about a lot of different shops on the Queen Mary, and I've found photographs to support, you know, what they've said about those shops. So, you know, for instance, like the Austin and Reed store, which is probably the fanciest men's department store shop on the Queen Mary. And, you know, they had one in first class and they had one in second class. The second class one was really more of a closet space, but nevertheless, it was there. And so, you know, things like that. But if, like, someone were to say, hey, Alex, you know, I was a crew member on Queen Mary, and I worked at this shop called, you know, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, right? You know, and it was on Promenade Deck. And if I don't know about it, I'll usually go to my friends and ask them, hey, have you heard of this, you know, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo shop or whatever, you know? So, yeah, that's how I kind of do things, but, you know, and then usually what they tell me, I'll try to find photographic evidence of it being there, that kind of thing. Moonzer says, what are your theories on what would have happened if CY's University was done with that role in her life if it ever happened? Oh, I get asked this a lot. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, you're basically asking me, like, what is the, you know, the semester at sea program all about? And I haven't researched the semester at sea program. I suppose, you know, it's not that it's not because, or what am I trying to say? I haven't researched it, not because I don't think it pertains to the Queen Elizabeth, but just because I'm interested in Queen Elizabeth the ship and not the semester at sea program. So, I mean, I can't really answer your question because I haven't really researched the semester at sea program very well. I know that it still exists, and it's done at Chapman University in California. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all I can tell you. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. All right. Ryan Hines says, Alex, did you meet any characters in Disneyland? If so, who? Oh, I've met practically, well, I can't say all of them. That wouldn't be true. But I've met pretty much every character that shows up on a daily basis. I've met all of them. But I mean, like, you can't really, like, you know, they're actors. You know, like, what do, you know? So it's not like you can just walk up to Mickey and ask for an autograph backstage. Like, you know, if you're backstage too, that means you're working and you can't be bothering other people who are working. So, you know, I did not go bother Mickey. So, all right. Ozzy says, congratulations, hitting over 47,000 subscribers. Well done. Thank you so much. Yes, I just surpassed 47,000, and I'm quickly making my way to 50,000. I have to plan, like, how I'm going to celebrate the 50,000th subscriber thing. Like, I have to figure out what kind of video I want to make, you know, what it's going to show and stuff like that. Like, I have all these ideas, but I'm like, are any of those ideas really worthy of a 50K celebration, or are they just random, like, videos that I could just make any other time? I don't know. Doc, so to answer your question, so yeah, there was a men's store. There were, okay, so there was, so, okay, this is what makes it really difficult for me to answer that question. One, I don't know all of them. But two, the stores on Queen Mary, the only one I know of that you could actually walk inside and buy something was the Austin Reed store. The other stores were actually kind of different. It was, if you've seen the main hall on Promenade Deck, there's all these glass cabinets, right? And currently, right now, they hold artifacts of the Queen Mary and stuff like that inside. But nevertheless, there's glass cabinets everywhere. And those glass cabinets used to be the store. Like, that's all there was to it. It was a glass cabinet with all the merchandise from that specific store, and that's it. And if you wanted to buy the merchandise, the prices were there listed right on the window, and or in the behind the window, and you would call a steward. Like, there was usually like someone monitoring main hall to answer questions and get you products if you wanted them. And if you wanted the product that was behind the glass, then they would either fetch one from the stores, or stores as in storage, fetch one from storage, or they would open the glass and get you the one that was in the display. And so that's kind of how they sold most things on Queen Mary. As far as I can think of, or at least what's coming to memory, the Austin Reed store on Promenade Deck was the only store on the ship, like a shop. Oh, no, there were two other ones. I'm sorry. There were two other shops where you could walk in. There was one on the left and the right side when you're looking at the Austin Reed store. And one of them was a flower shop at the very beginning. So you could actually, like, buy flowers and stuff for... I imagine most of the people buying those would either be men buying a bouquet for their wives or girlfriends or fiancés, or if you were a woman buying flowers, it would probably be for a corsage or some kind of other thing that went with your gown or something for the gala dinners that they had on the Queen Mary. So yeah, and then the other one was a cigar shop at one point. So they sold cigars. So those are the two shops that you could walk into. There was a flower store you could walk into, there was a cigar shop you could walk into, and then there was the Austin Reed's shop that you can walk into. And everything else, all the other glass windows around the promenade main hall area, were all for selling merchandise that did not require you to enter a shop to get into. If that makes any sense. And yeah, they sold things like purses, handbags, which are purses, but I mean, what am I trying to say? Like briefcases and things for men sometimes. The Austin Reed store was a men's department store, so it sold men's clothing and other wear. And then, yeah, for women, they would have had... I think at one point there was a shop window that had like two different kinds of clothing. I don't want to assume it was like dresses. It could have been like hats. It could have been scarves. But my memory's really fuzzy with it, and to be frank, I don't know everything that was ever sold on the Queen Mary. That's just what I have for you right now. That's all I got. But, yeah. Alright. Jack says, have you seen the Lusitania movie from 2007? Yes, I have. I saw it a couple years back. It was pretty good. I saw that movie before I was even an ocean liner fan, to be totally honest. That's kind of the funny thing. Let's see. Just reading more. So the train layout that I have is not in this room. Since I moved to this new apartment, this tea time is going to be only about, like, well, only going to show ocean liner stuff. The idea is that it's like make believe of like me being on an ocean liner as we're having tea and stuff. I haven't even drank my first sip yet. Um, that's good, but I have real milk today because I didn't buy oat milk again. And the real milk dulls the flavor of the Earl Grey. So to me, this tastes like hot milk, unfortunately. That's why I gotta get the oat milk back, because then it'll taste like Earl Grey again. But as for the train layout, it is in the office, which is in a completely different room, and I can't live stream it from this room. So what I'm going to be doing, though, is I'm going to be live streaming the train layout, I think this Sunday, from the other room, from the office. And because I actually took out the train layout the other day, and then it needed several repairs because it got damaged when it was moved here. And so I completed the repairs that were necessary, fixing track, fixing the mountain and stuff like that, because a lot of the stuff broke off during the transit. But yeah, a lot of that stuff's been fixed, and now it's ready for the track to be cleaned, and then to have that special product I bought to be like wiped on the rails, like I've been mentioning for months and then haven't done yet. So finally it's ready for that stage. I can put that on there, and run the trains nice and efficiently. Trying to think. And then I'm considering moving the majority of the train layout updates to my other channel, which is called Alex the Railroader. And the reason why is because I tend to notice that even though lots of people want me to keep the train stuff on this channel, it turns out whenever I post stuff about the train layout itself, people tend to unsubscribe, as if they think like that's all I'm going to do from now on is just models, so I don't know why, but they tend to do that, and I think I think the model layout needs its own channel, and I think that's what I'm going to do from now on. But this Sunday I will be live streaming from the office to show the train layout, and then work on it on the stream. So yeah, that's what's going to happen. But the history videos of like steam railroads and stuff like that, if I do get to it, they might still stay on this channel, just because, I still like talking about history. But I'm also kind of thinking, like, what if I move the railroad history stuff to the other channel as well, and then only do like maritime history and random history on this channel? You know what I mean? Because I still want to do history of like New Orleans, San Francisco, London, that kind of stuff. And I don't have a specific channel for that, so I'd like to put it on this channel. So that's kind of my thoughts right now on that. Alright, I gotta catch up on these comments. Keep in mind, folks, I am reading your comments, just not out loud. I'm reading ones that I think I should read out loud, basically. So I can't read every single one out loud and respond to it, because then I would be here forever. But I am reading your comments. Mounzer, that's pretty cool that you have all those photographs from the Samus family. Ryan Hines says, what are some things that you liked about working at Disneyland? Oh, there were lots of stuff. There was the fact that, you see, if I worked the morning shifts, I would get to Disneyland extra early, like 2 hours earlier than my shift. And if I was working the opening shift, which meant that I had to clock in at like 7, because the park would open at 8, I would get there at 5. And what I would do is I would walk. I would just walk the entire park. It was how I got my exercise, but it was also just nice. You know, the park was very quiet, very dark at 5 in the morning. You know, none of the sound effects were on quite yet. A lot of the lights were still turned off, and it was peaceful. Spooky, but peaceful. So, but it was nice, you know, that's one of the things I used to do. And then, you know, the other thing that I liked was talking to guests. I would talk, you know, to all the various guests, and, you know, they would share, you know, where they're from, what they're doing, what they like about the park, what they don't like. And having conversation with them was one of the things I loved the most. Because you got all kinds of different people. There were some people that outright hated their experience. They were just like, I hate this place. But among the people who hated it, there were people who misunderstood it. You know, there was one guy who was like looking around and he goes, you know, one of the things I don't like about this place is all the fake plants. Like, look at, you know, he's like, all the fake plants here and there. And I was like, sir, those are real plants. They're just very well tended, you know? Like, and I told him, I was like, you can actually go up and actually touch the plants. I'm like, they're real, you know? And he was like, what? And he's like, no, they look too perfect. I'm like, that's Disneyland, you know? That's what we do, you know? So he was really surprised to find that out. Like, the only place you'll find fake plants, really, is inside the rides. And that's about it, you know? Everything outdoors, everything, you know, usually exposed to daylight is a real plant, you know? I explained to him about, you know, the Jungle Cruise and how it's its own self-sustaining ecosystem, because it really is. The Adventureland jungle of the Jungle Cruise area is a self-sustaining thing. They don't always need to water it. They don't always need to fertilize it. The trees, when they grow, they drop their leaves. The leaves fall to the ground. When they fall to the ground, they decompose. They turn into soil. You know, if it's what am I trying to say? The jungle would capture the moisture overnight and maintain the cool air and the moisture from the night all through the day, which helped prevent the plants of needing to have water constantly, you know, sprayed to them, because it is Southern California. It's very dry. So there were things like that. So, you know, it was really cool. And the Jungle Cruise was pretty much allowed to overgrow. And at least at the time it was. Today they trim a lot of it because in recent years a lot of original park trees have started to fall. And so to prevent lawsuits, they've been removing a lot of original park trees, and that leaves the park very there's a lack of shade, basically. Anyway, and then other things too was, you know, just interacting with people and their experiences. I think one of my favorite experiences was really, well, I can't really think of a favorite. I just have so many experiences, you know. Yeah, it's just a lot. But the thing is that I had a lot of great experiences that I would never trade for anything in the world. People I've met and stuff like that, you know. But it does not outweigh the bad experiences for me. I feel like the bad experiences working there outweighed the good experiences for me. And that's why I'm not there anymore. But yeah. Tarkus says, where did you get your nautical themed decor from? I love it. However, I live in Brazil and I can't find any stores that sell good looking stuff for a reasonable price. Well, the model of the Titanic here was a kit that I built 10 years ago. So it's just a model kit. And I don't think they even sell it anymore. I think you have to buy it off of eBay. The photograph of the Queen Mary, the the poster of the Cunard poster. Those two were posters I purchased off of eBay because they were sold by someone who made them. They're copies of originals, but nevertheless the guy prints them. This poster here on this side was given to me by my friend Jason. So he wanted to give me something nice, and I think he was going through a thrift shop, and he saw this poster of the Aquitania, and he thought of me, and he sent it to me. So there's that. This shelf behind me, I designed the shelf, and I had my friend Steve R. Build it for me. So Steve R. had gone and basically cut it out, sanded it, he decorated it, polished it, all that kind of stuff. But I basically designed it, and that had its own funny story because I was showing the shelf to Steve Ablonsi, who's in the chat right now, and he was like, "Hey, that kind of looks like Queen Mary's builder's plaque," and I'm like, "Really?" And yeah, it kind of does. It looks like Queen Mary's builder's plaque, and I had no idea. But and then the stuff that's on the shelves are artifacts from the Queen Mary. Aside from the tea box that you can buy off of Amazon, but the other stuff are artifacts from the Queen Mary, including the china that you see here. That's from the Queen Mary. This actually had a real British person sipping from it at some point. So all that eBay. Yeah. So pretty much the majority of everything I have here, eBay. Yeah. Isaiah says, "Do you have cookies?" Yep. Cookies right here. I might as well try one right now. Hey there, K4RNA. Everyone just hanging out, just sitting here playing at the radio station. Awesome. Jeremy Fowler, how's it going? I like the new setup, haven't been able to watch for a bit. Alright, well I'm glad you're here. ShipGeek says, "Why is half of your footage being deleted on June 24th? What footage? I don't know what you mean. If you could explain, 'cause I have no idea what you mean. Oh, I think you're talking to Steve. Okay, I think you're talking to Steve. Okay. Mid-South Explorers, as I was saying at the beginning of the stream, because I think you missed it, I don't think you were here, but basically I'm not going to comment on the submarine that is currently lost, because I personally, I feel that's very insensitive of me to be, discussing that kind of thing and lending out, speculation and stuff like that. So I don't do that. And besides, my channel, I really focus on history, not current events. But as I said in the beginning of the live stream, I am, hoping and praying that we see the survivors soon and that they're brought up and, reunited with their families. So, that's all I can really say about it. Jack Bradley says, "Why was the Queen Mary criticized for looking too outdated when she entered service?" That's a good question. Because the Queen Mary, technically, was a modern marvel. You know, she had some of the most powerful steam turbine engine. Actually, she had the most powerful steam turbine engine plant ever put on an ocean liner. And, you know, and when it came to her Art Deco style, she had the latest British Art Deco style installed in her interiors. You know, she had some of the most modern amenities for her guests aboard the ship, and stuff like that. So she really was a modern marvel when she first set sail. But the thing was that when Cunard was designing Queen Mary, you know, they were really stuck because they wanted a new ship, something that represented the modern age. But at the time, they were fearful of doing something too new. They were afraid that if it looked too modern, too out of the ordinary, that they were going to alienate the clientele that they've built up over the years, who loved ships like Aquitania, Mauritania, and so on and so forth. So they were afraid, like, you know, we don't want to alienate people who love our current fleet of ships with this, you know, brand new, monstrous, modern ship. So, you know, and then there were other factors too, like the exterior of the Queen Mary and her hull design and all that is a very traditional look for a purpose. You know, there were new emerging technologies like bulbous bows was an emerging design technology. There were, you know, steam electric propulsion plants like the ones on Normandy. Those were kind of new to the ocean liner idea. You know, things like that. And with Queen Mary, they just didn't want to take any risks. They were like, look, we know what works, and we know if we do it bigger and better than we've ever done, it'll work. And they were right. I mean, people always talk about, oh, well, Normandy had the most advanced propulsion plant. Yes, absolutely. Normandy did have the most advanced propulsion plant at the time. But which one won the blue ribbon? The Queen Mary. And the reason why was because despite all that amazing technology, it just wasn't enough to beat sheer brute strength. And that's what the Queen Mary was. You know, there were things like that, you know, but people always talk about, oh, the Normandy had a really advanced hull design. Well, yeah, with the bulbous bow, but when it came to her fantail stern, that was a very old technology. And with the Queen Mary, Queen Mary didn't have a bulbous bow, but she did have a cruiser stern, which was at the time still one of the newer concepts being put on ocean liners, was a cruiser stern. And the cruiser stern was important because the whole point of a cruiser stern was that it extended out beyond the propellers and beyond the rudder, and it lended more buoyancy to the stern of the ship, because when ships move at speed through the water, there is a certain hydrodynamic force that ends up either, you guys probably know this better than I do, but it either pulls or pushes the ship down into the water further, which creates more drag along the hull because there's more surface area that hits the water. Well, with the Queen Mary, they installed, you know, the cruiser stern, and that helps add buoyancy to the very back of the ship, lifting the back of the ship further out of the water than it would otherwise have. And therefore, it reduced drag. So Normandy had a bulbous bow to reduce drag. Queen Mary had a cruiser stern to reduce drag. And that kind of canceled it out, you know. And let's keep in mind, Normandy's bulbous bow was not as efficient as a bulbous bow on a modern ship today. So Normandy's bulbous bow, while it was slightly more efficient than a normal bow on a ship at the time, it just wasn't that much more efficient. But there was things like that. And so Queen Mary was very traditional, but it worked. It worked. And so, you know, with that, that's why she was usually criticized, was because compared to the Normandy, Queen Mary just didn't look that new. You know, didn't look that bold. She looked like a traditional ship. Me, on the other hand, I like that. I like the traditional look of the Queen Mary. The Queen Elizabeth is a very beautiful ship, but I still prefer Queen Mary over the Queen Elizabeth. I just think the Queen Mary looks more beautiful. That's just me, you know. So, yeah. Let's try to... Jack Bradley, what was the worst year for Olympic? I don't discuss Olympic ships, Olympic class ships on my channel. Sorry. Um, Veronica says, "What do you think about the closure of Disneyland Splash Mountain?" I really don't care, honestly. You know, I don't enjoy Disneyland anymore, so I don't really care. I kind of get bored talking about it, to be honest. I'm not being rude or anything. It's just that that's how I feel. Like I really, at this point, they could demolish Main Street, and it doesn't surprise me, and it doesn't bother me. So yeah, it probably has something to do with me living 1,100 miles away from Disneyland and not being near it anymore. That's probably part of the reason why I don't care. But I think it's just because my life went a completely different direction, and so now the stuff I used to care about, I don't really care anymore. Um, Historic ships? No, I haven't heard of that B-29 bomber. Steve says there was a W.H. Smith bookstore on the starboard corner. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. The portside store was a florist. There was a tobacco cigar store. Yeah, that one I mentioned. You say on the community post. Ship Geek says, "Can you say on the community post I re-uploaded your..." I think you're still talking to Steve, but I don't know who you're talking to. Jack Bradley says, "Hey Alex, why don't you do a video on the hated ocean liners and see what you can do to improve them?" I don't have that kind of imagination. I can't imagine how to improve an ocean liner, especially one that I've never really heard of. I'd have to literally research liners that I haven't heard of to find out which ones people don't like, and then to figure out like what I would do to fix it, only to be criticized by everyone on YouTube for having dumb ideas. So I don't think so. Why was Mauritania... Oh, so Jack Bradley asked, why was Mauritania repainted white? The reason why was because there was a time when she was basically relegated to being a cruise ship. And when you're a cruise ship, you often sail to on a ship is that it absorbs sunlight. And that makes the interiors of the ship hotter because the black paint is just absorbing all that heat from the sun. So by painting the exterior of the ship white or a very, very light gray or a very, very light green, because some of them were green, it helped to reflect more of the sunlight away from the ship and kept the interiors of the ship a bit cooler. Jack Bradley asks, what wreck site would I visit if I had the option, Titanic or Lusitania? Neither. I don't want to be anywhere underwater at all. Ozzy says, how is Alex's weather today? Today it is a little on the warmer side. We got clear skies. It's a little dry. Not my kind of weather, to be honest. Doc says, you're awesome for answering my questions, and thanks to Steve for the assist. I appreciate it, fellas. No problem. Let me just text my dad real quick, because we have a roast in the oven. I need to tell him to flip the roast over. Just a second. Turn the roast so it gets Even cooked. There we go. Alright, hopefully he sees that. Okay, so... Jack Bradley says, was there once a plan for Cunard to remove the Queen Mary and keep the Queen Elizabeth operational and used as a cruise ship? If so, why did it never happen? There was a plan similar, but not quite what you described. The plan was that Queen Mary... So, okay. This happened in 1964, or 1963. Could have been 1963, honestly. But basically, transatlantic travel was slowing down. You know, airplanes were the dominant means of getting across the oceans of the world, and especially across the Atlantic. So, you know, there was really no need for ocean liners. And so the numbers of passengers crossing aboard the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth were dwindling and dwindling fast. And so basically Cunard was like, okay, well, our backup is using these ships as cruise ships. So they put the Queen Mary as a cruise ship because the Queen Mary is older than Queen Elizabeth by 4 years, not much, but still. Queen Mary is older, so they thought we'll use the older ship as a cruise ship, and the newest one will be the ocean liner. And so the thing was that Queen Mary was not a very good cruise ship because she was, first of all, just not designed for cruising. She couldn't go to any of the profitable ports because all the profitable ports had really shallow harbors, and Queen Mary has a really deep draft, so she couldn't fit. But also, she had air conditioning that was really better suited for the North Atlantic, which was always cold anyway. So the ship couldn't stay cool in warm weather. She just couldn't. So when she went cruising, she couldn't stay cool, and that was very uncomfortable for the passengers. She just didn't offer anything that people wanted on a cruise ship. So they ended up moving Queen Mary back into the North Atlantic run, and then converting Queen Elizabeth into a cruise ship. And by 1964, I think maybe 1965, they added a Lido deck on Queen Elizabeth. But by 1964, Queen Elizabeth was occasionally being used for cruises to the Canary Islands. She had slightly better air conditioning than the Queen Mary, so she could stay cooler in the warm weather. But yeah, in 1965, they added a Lido deck to the end of Queen Mary, to the stern, which meant she had an outdoor swimming pool, which made her more preferable than Queen Mary for cruising duty. Nevertheless, she didn't do very good as a cruise ship either, because once again, she was an ocean liner with a really deep draft. She couldn't fit into the shallow, profitable ports, and so, you know, and the other thing too was she just didn't offer that many good views of, you know, the cruising areas that she went to, so she just wasn't a very good cruise ship either. And so basically the idea was that they would retire the Queen Mary to save money, because the Queen Mary was costing like $2 million a year to run. And so they would retire the Queen Mary, and they would keep the Queen Elizabeth for until the original idea was to keep Queen Elizabeth in operation as an ocean liner and cruise ship up until 1969, when the QE2 would go into service. Unfortunately, Queen Elizabeth didn't make it to 1969. She was just costing so much money, and there wasn't enough passengers. So by 1968, she was retired. October 1968, she was officially retired from the Cunard line. And so that's the story of Queen Elizabeth. But she would have really, you know, only lasted one more year, if there was anything. But sadly, she couldn't even last that one more year in service. So, yeah. Let's see. Jack Bradley, yeah, there is somebody who, you know, they've been impersonating me on other channels. Who are they? I don't know. I don't really care who they are. But yeah, they just go around and they pretend they're me, essentially. And the thing is that I can block them, but that doesn't stop them from going to other people's channels like they've been doing. Like, they're not impersonating me on my channel, they're impersonating me on other people's channels. They're pretending to be me. Sometimes they say rude things, sometimes they don't, sometimes they're just talking to people. They just want the attention of being Alex the Historian, which is kind of flattering, to be honest, but yeah, they just want the attention of being Alex the Historian, and yes, I have blocked them and stuff like that, but only because they've been very rude to me whenever I've approached them about it. They will not admit that that they're doing anything wrong. They think what they're doing is perfectly okay, you know. So they haven't once said that they are sorry, you know, despite complaining that I'm unforgiving. They actually haven't said the words "I'm sorry." So, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, and the thing is that they've made multiple accounts. That way they can switch back and forth from accounts and then just rename it Alex the Historian and then use my profile picture. And then whenever somebody catches them and blocks them, they just create another account and then name it Alex the Historian and then use my photo. So there's really nothing I can do. I've approached YouTube about it. YouTube has not responded back. I don't think they really care. They never do. But, you know, all I can say is, if you're curious if someone who is I am almost never on other people's channels commenting, especially even on live streams. I do not go to other people's channels and comment as Alex the Historian. If I watch other people's videos, it's under an alias. I don't use my current, you know, thing because I don't want to show favoritism to people. You know, I don't want a certain YouTuber to go like, oh, you watch their channel but not mine. You know, I don't want to be that kind of person. So, you know, so I don't usually respond on other people's channels. But if you do see someone that says that they're Alex the Historian and they're commenting and offering opinions, it's probably not me. But if it is me, the easiest way you can tell, just click on the name and see if it brings you to my channel. If it doesn't bring you to my channel, it brings you to someone else's channel, then it's not me. So that's just an easy way to find out. But yeah. Jack Rowley says, would you keep ocean liners running if you had the option? Yes, because the Queen Mary 2 is currently the last remaining ocean liner in service, but she is so popular that she's often booked up a whole year in advance. A whole year. And so that means that while you're waiting a year to get your voyage underway, you could have been on another ocean liner by then. So I think actually it would be profitable to have at least one more ocean liner out in service. So yeah, I would be totally all for keeping ocean liners running. That being said, if we're talking about an ocean liner that looks like a classic ocean liner, no. Because those wouldn't be profitable in today's modern society. I know a lot of people wish so badly that it would be profitable that they claim that it is profitable, but it's not. If they were, they would build them that way. And they don't because they aren't. So, but yes, if it was another ocean liner that looked like the Queen Mary 2, the modern ocean liner, not the original, because when I say Queen Mary 2, some people think I mean the original Queen Mary. But if it looked like the Queen Mary 2, and it was operating alongside the Queen Mary 2, I think that would be a profitable venture. But yeah, that's kind of what I think about ocean liners today. Historic Ships says, hey Alex, even though this isn't history related, but back in Orange County, California, in the early 80s, my mom said in the 80s Ronald Reagan came to Orange County for elections. My mom got to interview him. Interesting. Yeah, there was a time that Ronald Reagan came to Long Beach, and he was brought to the Queen Mary to kind of visit the ship. And at the time, the current, I think he was the city manager, maybe not the mayor. He might have been the mayor, but I don't remember perfectly. But there was somebody in the city government who was there to tour him around the Queen Mary, and they offered one of the artifacts aboard the Queen Mary. It was a statue. I don't remember what statue it was, but they offered it to him as a gift. And of course Ronald Reagan took it and thanked him for the gift. But the thing was that artifact from the Queen Mary was not that person's to give away. And so it was kind of funny because I knew someone who had basically spoken to the Reagan archives, because there's like a museum for Ronald Reagan and stuff like that. They have like artifacts from his whole life. And asked them, like, do you have this item that used to be on the Queen Mary? And they said, we don't have that item. So somewhere along the lines it got lost. Ronald Reagan either lost it or the archives lost it. But yeah, so really sad. He got a gift from the Queen Mary that really wasn't his to be given. And and it's lost forever. Doc says, "Hey, Alex, did Disney have an on-site museum or archives you were all required to visit or train at as guides?" No. When you are brought in as a Disneyland tour guide, you're brought in based off of the knowledge you already have. So you had to be the kind of person who, in your free time, researched Disneyland history. As crazy as that sounds, that's one of the things I tell people, like, I loved working for guest relations, but I would never pay for a guest relations tour, because while they do often read from a script on the tour, the scripts are based off of the knowledge of one of the tour guides, and you just have to trust that that tour guide did a good job researching. And then if you're paying for a private host, they just pull whatever is off the top of their head, whatever they have in their memory. And so I was one of the people that I felt like I did a very good job researching. So when I toured people around as a host, I gave them the most accurate information that I possibly could. But sometimes the information that is given to people about the history of something at the park is not true. It was read off of like somebody's blog post at one point, and then that made it into, what the tour guide said. So, there are some really silly things said in the park by the tour guides. And the sad thing is, even to this day, I get people commenting on my old Disneyland videos, and they go, "Oh, Alex, that thing you said, that's not true. You see, a tour guide told me this." And I'm like, well, that tour guide was wrong, because there's no way this is that and that's this, So it's one of those things where it's like, it's sad. This is like one of the most richest companies in the world, and they don't send their tour guides to get official history training on Disneyland. They don't. It's just based off of how knowledgeable you are when you go in for the interview. So, yeah. And even in the interview, most of it was not really based off of Disneyland history at all. It was mostly just like how good you are at your job. So it was like, are you good at communicating? Are you good at resolving problems? That's what they cared more about. They didn't ask that many historical Disney questions. They asked me, what year did the park open? They asked me weird stuff like, when did Pirates of the Caribbean open? Who were some of the most prominent Imagineers? That kind of thing. They asked me some basic history questions, and I was able to answer it. But yeah, unfortunately, the tour guides at Disneyland do not get officially trained on Disneyland history at all. They are not taken anywhere to learn anything. They learn either what's written on the script, which was written by somebody else who learned stuff on their own, or whatever they learned on the internet themselves. This one tour guide was telling me, because I used to, after I retired from being a tour guide, I still used to go to the kiosks and ask for wait times and things like that. But I was having a conversation with one of the tour guides, and I was telling her how much that I love Disneyland history. She goes, "Oh, well, did you know that the dinosaurs in the Primeval World diorama on the Disneyland Railroad came from Ellen's Universe of Energy attraction in Epcot?" And I looked at her, and I'm like, "No, it didn't." And she's like, "Yeah, it did." I'm like, "No." Ellen's Universe of Energy opened in the 1980s or 1990s. I think it was 1990s. I'm like, but the Dinosaurs of the Primeval World opened in 1965, during summer of 1965, while Walt Disney was still alive. I'm like, it did not come from Epcot, because Epcot did not even exist until 1982. So, I'm like, it's... And Ellen's Universe of Energy didn't close till the 2010s. So I'm like, yeah, these dinosaurs have been here since 1965, So I tried not to be rude. I wasn't rude. I was just, but in my head, I'm like, oh my God. I wasn't upset at her. I was upset at the institution that they don't have a way to teach their tour guides. And these are tour guides. People used to... I never got this money myself. Let me just start with that. I didn't get paid the amount of money I'm about to tell you. But I was worth what was it? Something around $300 an hour as a private host. $300 an hour. And you had to trust that I knew the right information and I wasn't giving you lies. You know? Because I was never formally trained on Disneyland history. It's just, I knew the stuff and I knew it very, very well. So, yeah. Historic Ships says, I feel like Alex's live streams is getting to see an old friend again, because every live stream, there's a smile on my face till the end of it. Oh my gosh, thanks so much. That makes me really happy to hear. Ship Geek says, sirens, car alarms, drifting cars, what more can be there in the background? So the thing, Ship Geek, is I know you might think, oh, how unprofessional. Alex is letting all these background noises get in the live stream. Okay, yeah, maybe it's unprofessional. But the thing is, I need those background noises, because the music that's playing right now, I want it in the background, but it is highly copyrighted music, and I can't play it with utter silence in the background, or else I will get a copyright strike. But at the same time, I want people to hear the music, you know, because it kind of adds to the thing. So I need those car alarms to go off once in a while. I need the birds to chirp in my ear, you know. I need the background noise to happen. It's got to stay, or else I can't put the music on. And the people love the music. They love the music. So, yeah. Let's see. Dino DeSantis says, do you know the distance Queen Mary could travel without refueling if she were fully fueled up? So if Queen Mary was fully fueled up, and she was traveling at normal service speed, which is around 28 to 29 knots, with all 4 sets of engines running, she could go almost about 4,000 nautical miles. Okay, so that's kind of her range, about 4,000, maybe 4,500 nautical miles. But the funny thing is there were certain voyages, like during the World War, or even during the last Great Cruise, when the Queen Mary needed to cross really long distances of ocean that were in excess of 5,000 plus miles. So, like, for instance, on her last Great Cruise, she went from Portugal to South America. It was a distance of something like 6,000 nautical miles. I'm trying to think if that's... my memory is failing me, but it was something along the lines of around 6,000 nautical miles. I don't remember if she went directly from Portugal to South America or if she stopped off somewhere in Africa, but I don't remember. But anyway, she crossed over the ocean from that part of the world to this part of the world, and that was such a long voyage. She was not designed to go that distance. So what they did was they ran only 2 sets of engines on that particular voyage, and they were able to save some of the fuel so she could make it all the way across. So yeah, she went all the way across the ocean at one point with just 2 sets of engines running, which is not weird, actually. It's not a weird thing. You know, a lot of times ships, when they come in and out of port, they don't need all 4 propellers, turning. So, they'll have just 2 of the screws running, that kind of thing. But yeah, still a cool fun fact, nevertheless. So, I'd say maximum with only 2 propellers in operation, she could probably cross a 6,000 mile stretch. But that's really pushing it, yeah. Okay, so folks, if you're seeing ads, it might be because you're refreshing the page. Every time you refresh the page, an ad will play. But there shouldn't be any ads playing in the middle of the live stream, because I did not turn on that feature. So if it is playing and you haven't been refreshing your page, it could be because YouTube is being sneaky and is trying to insert ads on my video, which I can't do anything about. YouTube is very sneaky with stuff like that. I don't know if you noticed, but have you ever, have you ever clicked on a video, but you weren't ready to watch it, so you hit pause, right? And you notice the ad will start playing anyway. Like a minute after you hit pause, it'll suddenly play, and the ad will play. And that's one of YouTube's sneaky ways of getting you to watch an ad even when you don't want to. So, yeah. Moonzer says, Alex, if you could time travel back to 1969, would you visit the Queen Elizabeth in Florida? No, because when she was in Florida, she wasn't fully open like the Queen Mary is. She was only open for tours, and the tours only took you to certain sections of the ship, and it was very dark in the ship. Very dark. You couldn't really take photos because there was none of the original lights were on. You basically had maybe a couple of quickly strung up lamps that they put in. So it wouldn't have made for good footage or good photos anyway. So no, I wouldn't have done it. It would have been very dark, and it would have been very warm because it was very humid and it was very hot. And the ship none of her air conditioning, nothing was on. They couldn't run the electrical system of the ship because she was deemed a fire hazard. So they couldn't run the electrical system of the ship. So yeah, it was just not anywhere I would want to be. Historic ships? No, my dad lives with me. Ship Geek. Yeah, the shrimp and polenta was really good. Veronica, about the Russian Scorpion submarine next to the Queen Mary, I don't have any new information. If I did, I would put it in the Queen Mary updates, but I don't have any new information on it. Tarkus. So, in the description below is a link to where you can hear the playlist of music that is playing right now. Not really a playlist so much as a compilation. I'm just reading through people's comments. They're talking with each other. Okay, so Steve has the information. Alex, the bronze Cowboy on Mustang by Maurice Lambert. That was donated to Ronald Reagan, was returned to the Queen Mary after the end of his term as president. It is back aboard the ship now. Really? Okay. I'll talk to you later about why I heard that it was lost. But I'll talk to you later. I can't say it on the live stream. Historic ships, that sounds pretty awesome. Steve, about the Art Nouveau Summer and Autumn, I believe I just saw them on the Queen Mary. In the footage that Chris shot for me, he was in main hall, starboard side, by the phone booth, starboard side, main hall. And in that corner, behind the glass, were the two statues. So I think they're on the ship. And you can see that in my Queen Mary update video. You can see them in that video. Jamie says, "Hey Alex, would it be special if the Queen Mary could feature the anchor room, or would it be difficult and not safe for the guests to walk to the location?" I'm guessing you mean the chain locker for the anchors. So the chain locker for the anchors is probably very difficult to get to. I don't imagine it would be easy at all. And even then, it would be a closet space. You would have to climb down into it from the top in a little hatch. So I don't think it's really even possible. Jersey Kevin says, "How do you feel about the Star Wars hotel closing?" I thought it was kind of amusing that it's closing because, you know, so there are things the company does, and they do it because they want to make money. And they care more about the money than they care about giving the experience. And the Star Wars hotel was one of those things where the company ordered this hotel because they were like, hey, we can do something like this and we would do it best and I know we'd make a lot of money. And then they were like, let's also cut the budget as we go along so we can make it cheaper. And the end result was a hotel that just did not, you know, it did not strike a lot of people as, I want to visit that, you know. The people who did visit enjoyed their visit. So yeah, there are good reviews for the hotel, but only because that's the people who really, really wanted to visit that hotel, and because they wanted it so bad, when they got there, they got exactly what they were expecting, and therefore they liked it. But the majority of people who looked at it from the outside were like, I don't want to go there. And that's the problem. And so that was the problem with the Star Wars hotel. It just, I looked at it and I was like, that doesn't look like a Star Wars hotel. I would never spend my money to go there. And plus, it was also really expensive. I can understand some of the expense. I mean, granted, there was a lot of experiences that were tailored individually to the people visiting. So I can understand that part. Hello, Rena. How's it going? Rena says, I missed the sandwich conversation earlier. Yeah, I had a really big lunch. It was a big sandwich for lunch, and now I'm not hungry, so I didn't make my cucumber sandwich today. So... Oh, I see. Barbra Streisand. There were two. There were four statues. Barbra Streisand has two. Okay, I understand. um. All right. Well, I think I caught up to all the comments. K4RNA says, Blue Ribbon, well, now you made it public, saw what you did. Now I need to see that. Rena Rosales says, next time you can have cute. That's the thing, though, is like, the ingredients to make the cucumber sandwich don't last very long. Like the dill, as soon as I get it, it stays in my fridge at best 2 days. And then it starts going yellow and then dies. And it can't be used. So the thing about like the cucumber sandwich is I need to like place an order for groceries like the day before I do a live stream. And the thing is I don't always need groceries the day before the live stream. So I can't like place an order for them. So that's the thing about the cucumber sandwiches is like I finally was able to place an order for the ingredients. I placed the order, I received the items yesterday, and then I forgot I was having a cucumber sandwich for lunch today, and instead I went and ordered a sandwich for lunch, and now I can't make the cucumber sandwich. So I can make it tomorrow and eat it by myself tomorrow, but the whole point was to put it on the live stream, so it was part of the tea time. Stark Ship says, hey Alex, where did you get the Queen Mary poster in the background? So which one? There are two. There's one with the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, and then there's one with just the Queen Mary. Chris, awesome. Sounds good. Eric says, since you love trains so much, what do you think of the Thomas the Tank Engine? I never grew up on Thomas the Tank, so I'm not really interested. But I wouldn't say I love trains so much. It's just I like certain trains a lot. Ken says, if they ever try to repair the Queen Mary's bridge wings, do you think they could tastefully add external struts on the bottom of each? What would the struts be for? Historic Ship says, just the Queen Mary. So this poster I got on eBay. So the guy still sells them. They are 11 by 32 inches, I think. Yeah, and it's just the Queen Mary cutaway. The guy still sells them on eBay. So, pretty good price, I think. Pretty good price. And I had to get the frame separately. I got the frame on Amazon. I just typed in 11 by 32 inch frame and I found it. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Steve, for doing that. All right. I hate having to do that. Oh, Ken says that the struts are for adding support to the bridge wings. Um, I mean, if they refurbish the bridge wings, then I don't think they'll need struts. You know what I mean? Like, I think the struts are just in addition, but I mean, in my opinion, if it's necessary, then it's necessary. But if it's not necessary, then it's not necessary. You know what I mean? But I don't see a problem with it, but, you know, but if they can refurbish it without needing to add struts, then I think it should be fine. Dino DeSantis says, are the bridge wings collapsed? No, they're still in good shape. They're just closed out of an abundance of caution because they aren't necessarily maintained. They haven't collapsed. There's no structural damage to them at all. It's just they're closed because nobody's really sure yet if it's safe to keep getting people out on there. So until they can do an assessment and then make any repairs that are necessary, then they're not going to have anybody out there. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, just like Steve said, I don't think there's anything wrong with them. They're just closed out of an abundance of caution. It wouldn't hurt to get someone up there to look at them and then just double check, but... So... Is my tea still warm? Yeah, it's still warm. Alright. So yeah, folks, I'm really excited. This Friday will be a new video on the channel. And I know I have a curse where if I usually say what video it is, then it doesn't show up. Which is a true curse. It's a real thing. But actually, I'm almost done with this video. So, actually, I know it's going to show up on Friday. Because it's almost done. But basically, it is a complete redo and combination of my Queen Mary at War series. So I don't know if you guys remember, but on my channel I had 3 videos. And some people don't even know they were 3 because most people only watched the second video. They didn't watch the first, they didn't watch the third. But there was a video series called Queen Mary at War, and it was all about the Queen Mary's war service in World War II. Well, the thing I've done with it is not only have I combined all 3 videos into one, but I've also added somewhere around 15 minutes of extra information. That's a lot of extra information. But I've added somewhere around 15 minutes of extra information. I've also corrected some mistakes that I made the first time around when it came to information, when it came to the editing. There was a lot of editing mistakes especially, but a lot of that has been corrected. There was mistakes with narration, misspeaking, or audio being cut off at weird points. So anyway, I've fixed and corrected all of that, and yeah, and it's gonna be a really good video. There's a lot of extra stuff in there. Some of it is just sprinkled here and there, so it may not immediately be apparent that it's brand new, but it is. There is a lot of new information in there. And then some information is like whole minutes of extra information. There's like a whole section in the video where like a good solid 3 minutes of video is entirely brand new. And so yeah, there is a really it's gonna be good. It's gonna be one big documentary. It's gonna be anywhere between 45 to 47 minutes long. That's how long the video is, between 45 to 47 minutes long. And it's not just about Queen Mary during wartime. I knew that the thing about the Queen Mary is to describe some of her history, you need to deliver it in context. And so with the video, in order to deliver the full information of the Queen Mary during the war, I had to tell a little bit of her origin story, and I had to tell what happened afterwards. So it's kind of technically a full documentary about the history of the Queen Mary. It's just that the primary focus is the Queen Mary during the war. And that's what takes up the majority, like 90% or 95% of the video is the war part. But there is a good amount of information to talk about the beginning and the end. Well, not necessarily the end, but current, present day. But that being said, if it's 47 minutes long, just imagine one day when I do the full history of the Queen Mary, which includes everything about the ship's history. It's probably gonna be a video that's easily an hour and a half long. That's how long the video is gonna be. My gosh. But yeah, so yeah, that video is coming out on Friday. I know because it's almost done, and I don't see, knock on wood, I don't see any problems happening. I mean, lest the apartment collapses. But yeah, and it's gonna be good. It's gonna be really good. I think, oh my gosh. I have already watched portions of it. What is that? I have already watched portions of it, and it's really good. So yeah, stay tuned for that on Friday. Mark says, Alex, I do enjoy your Queen Mary at War. Truly inspiring. Cannot wait. You must have investigated a great deal to put this new iteration together. I did. I had to research everything to double check that everything is right. Because there was a lot of stuff. Well, okay, not a lot of stuff. There was a handful of things that were in the original 3 videos that could have been explained better and could have been corrected. There were some things that weren't necessarily wrong, but were misleading in the way that I told it. And so there were things like that I corrected. Rewording of certain things to make it seamless, make it make sense. There was a lot of, in the original series, there was a lot of repeating of information because the problem was that I knew that if I put out the video in 3 separate parts, I knew that what would happen is people were going to favor watching one of the parts and then not watch the others. And that's exactly what happened. It turned out the second video was more popular than either of the 2. I had a lot of brand new people coming to the channel watching part 2 and not realizing there was even a part 1 or a part 3, despite the fact that at the beginning of the video it said this is part 2, and then at the end of the video it said next up is part 3, and people still didn't realize that there was a part 1 and a part 3. So I knew that would happen, and it did, and it was disappointing because you got to watch all 3 parts. Like, that's what's so cool about the video, is the whole thing. But I learned to stop making videos in multiple parts. From now on, any videos I make is going to be all one video together. It's not going to be multiple parts because people don't watch the other parts. They don't realize it's there even when you tell them. It's the same thing for my Queen Mary update videos. Like, my most recent update video, I had to tell people clearly at the beginning of the video, everything you see in this video today is not the full story. There's a lot more work going on that may not be described in this video because this is only about what happened during, up to June. And so, nevertheless, you get people that are like, what about the Scorpion submarine? I'm like, that was mentioned in the April update. Oh, what about the Queen Mary's whatever, the dry dock? That was in the February update, that kind of thing. So it was like, there's a lot of people that were asking questions. I'm like, that's in the previous update. That's in the previous update. And so that's the problem with multi-part series is you tell people to watch the previous parts and then they don't. And then they just ask questions anyway. So I'm like, might as well make a whole video, It's more interesting that way anyway. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch like a whole video? So, Mark says, wow, 45 minutes long. I will savor this with something special to eat and drink. Oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I only hope that I do the sound editing good, because that's one of the things. A lot of people get very particular about the sound. I know there's a lot of people that are like, Alex, you don't need music in your videos. And that may be true. Maybe I don't need music in my videos, but I want music in my videos. I think the music helps to tell a good story. And that's what my videos are. I mean, they are full of factual information, but they are for entertainment. I want young people to watch my videos and be entertained by them. So that's the thing is like, yeah, I think the music adds something to it. But I will be triple checking the music this time, making sure it's not too loud, not too quiet, certainly not too quiet. I don't want the music too quiet. But I'm going to try to like make sure the audio levels are even and stuff like that. There's a couple of sound effects in the video, not much, just a few sound effects. Like when the Queen Mary strikes the Curacao, there's a sound of the ship striking the other ship and stuff like that. And there might be sound effects for the rogue wave that hits the Queen Mary, but I don't know. Things like that. But otherwise, there's a lot of music in the video. So I think the music helps carry the story along. Oh, ow, my hip. Oh my God. That hurt. I am not as flexible as I was when I was younger. Oh man, my hip hurts so bad. Okay, so let's see. James says, thanks, really happy here. I'm on the Caribbean island called Isla Mujeres. Island of Women? Do I have that right? The Island of Women? Isla Mujeres? Alex keeps me up on Queen and Disneyland. Awesome. Steve says, music makes a huge difference in the total entertainment of a documentary video. Thank you. I think the same thing. When I watch documentaries, I like when they have music because, I feel like it helps to carry the story along. So yeah, it's... Yeah, so, that's the thing is like, yeah, I've had a few people who are like, ugh, this music really doesn't belong here. And I'm like, I'm sorry you hate the music so much that you won't watch the video, but I like music in my videos. I think it works, like... So, to be honest, I make the videos in a certain way that I want to watch them. Like, believe it or not, I watch my own videos. I really do. The most recent one I watched, what was it? The Rolling Mary. Just for fun. I watched the Rolling Mary video just for fun. Because I like the way I made that video. I enjoy it. And I watch it over and over again and I don't get tired of it. And so I like to make videos that make me so interested that I watch them over and over and over again. And some people, they're not that way. They're the kind of people, they're like, oh, I watch everything just once. And that's fine. That's fine. But there are people in my audience who want to watch this stuff over and over and over again. So I've got to make it so it's entertaining and will keep their attention throughout the entire video. And I think music helps with that. If it was just me talking through the whole video, yeah, that might be good for ASMR, but I don't think it would be good for the majority of people who watch. Steve says, totally does help carry the story. Yeah. K4RNA, thank you so much for the donation. Alex, you're such an honest person, it fascinates me. Most YouTubers are not. I so respect that. Have a nice evening, just be you. Don't worry about the criticism. Music is good. Thank you so much. Yeah, well, I mean, I try to be as honest as I can. I think like when I started my channel, I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to be authentically me. Because there's a lot of YouTubers who they they build for themselves a personality for their channel, which is totally fine. It's the same thing as uh, 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 who's a actor that, oh, okay, like the comedian, now I can't remember his name. I was just thinking about him. Rodney Dangerfield, right? Rodney Dangerfield, funny comedian. And the thing about Rodney Dangerfield is that, obviously he's not the exact same person he portrays himself as on stage, or portrayed himself as on stage. He was a different person in real life, but he had a stage character. And that's a totally normal thing to see, especially on YouTube. There's a lot of YouTubers who have a stage character, and that's totally fine. But the problem with that is that a lot of people consider YouTube to be a reflection of real life. So when they see a YouTube creator, they subconsciously expect the person they see on screen to be the person that exists in real life. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are playing a character of themselves. And so when you actually meet them in real life, they're not really the same person. Maybe they're not as funny, maybe they're not as nice, or maybe they are nicer in person than they are on camera, And so even though there's nothing wrong with that, technically speaking, I knew that I wanted to be authentically me on my channel. Opinions and everything. Because I don't want to meet someone one day and for them to say, oh, you're very different on camera than you are in person. I think that would just break my heart, honestly. So I am authentically me. Albeit I probably don't curse as much on camera as I might in real life. But that's only because I know that there's a lot of kids watching and I don't believe in cursing in front of kids. So, but nevertheless, yeah, that's me. So, Dina says, how are your plans going for your transatlantic trip? I still have the money saved up, not all of it, but I'm still saving. Thing is that right now money is becoming tight once again. Usually around summertime every year, the money becomes tight, and then towards winter it just balloons, and that's when I can start saving up. So, but yeah, I'm at that time of year where, the amount of money I get goes almost directly towards all my expenses, and I have almost nothing left over. So the saving is still happening. It's just going very slowly. So I'm hoping that I can kind of boost that again. And also, I think one of the things that's making it a problem is I'm also paying my taxes to the IRS. It is a huge sum that I have to pay. And so that money could have been going into my UK trip savings, but it's not. But there is a positive about this. And I didn't think about this before until like 2 weeks ago. But there's a positive about having to wait to book my trip, which is that if I originally thought at the beginning of this year that I would have all the money saved up by June to book my trip, and I was so excited. I was telling everybody on the internet, I'm like, I'm going to have money this June, I'm going to book the trip. But the thing was, is if I booked the trip, let's say this month, then I probably wouldn't be able to actually go on the trip till spring of next year, because you have to book the Queen Mary 2 almost a year in advance. But the thing is that if I went to the UK in spring of next year, and I went to Paris, Notre Dame wouldn't be open, because Notre Dame reopens at the end of 2024, like December, pretty much. And the other thing, too, was that my friend Chris, who's going with me, is like, oh, I really, really want to go on the Queen Mary 2 during winter, because he wants to be in a North Atlantic storm on the Queen Mary 2. He wants to see the Queen Mary 2 battling the ferocious waves. Scary, I know. But he wants to see that. And so the thing was it's almost a blessing in disguise that I don't have the money yet. Because if I do save up the money later on this year, then we might not go till December of next year, which means we'll be able to see Notre Dame when we get to Paris, which I'm really excited for. I really want to film Notre Dame. I don't want to miss that. So, and I want to make a video about Notre Dame maybe, or at least a vlog about Notre Dame or something, a tour Oh, maybe more. Maybe I'll make a tour of Notre Dame, a vlog about Notre Dame, and then a history video about Notre Dame. There you go. Same footage, 3 videos. That's the cool thing about going on the UK trip, is that I film the footage, but I can make 3 different types of videos out of each one. That way I'm getting the full use out of all the footage. So yeah. ShipGeek says another ad. Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I don't know why. I did not turn on the ad feature for this video. I did not. I made sure it was off. So, I don't know. I think YouTube is just purposely putting ads anyway, regardless of me having it on, which is something that they do. Even when you turn monetization off on a video, they still place ads for themselves, not for me. So, I'm sorry, you guys. But I purposely did not put ads on this video, but apparently it is playing ads regardless. So... let's see. Justin says, what happened to Queen Mary's original furniture? There's still a lot of original furniture still on the Queen Mary, but the majority of it got old, had to be thrown out. Then there was also a lot of furniture that was sold at auction in the 1970s. There were several auctions held to sell off Queen Mary artifacts to help pay for the restoration of the ship. So a lot of those artifacts were sold off in the 70s and are still circulating on eBay to this day. On eBay, there's still like third-class chairs that are selling for like $2,000. But the ship still has a huge amount of her original furniture still on board in the storage areas. And it's high-quality furniture. It's not like the cheap stuff that, you know, maybe you get at a yard sale and then, like, when it breaks, it's done, right? This furniture that is on the Queen Mary, it is so high quality that even if, like, the stuffing came out, even if the upholstery was done, the frame of the chair is all you need. You can reupholster the rest, and it'll still be good. So I hope that one day a lot of that furniture can be restored and then reused on the ship in some form or another, maybe not necessarily everywhere. Let's see. Steve says, I think that both you and I are pretty much our natural selves while on camera, don't you think? Yeah, I think so. Oh my gosh, Mark is so nice. I'm like reading Mark's comments and it's making my heart melt. It's like I'm not good at getting compliments from people. I feel so bashful. Nicholas says, Dear Alex, have you been tempted by the idea of using the funds from the trip to Europe into a full experience Queen Mary visit the way you like instead? What does that mean? From the trip to Europe into a full experience Queen Mary visit the way you like instead? Well, there are 2 different things going on there. One, I have promised that the money that goes towards the Europe trip will not be touched. It only is going towards the Europe trip. So I have not spent any of the Europe trip money on anything else. It stays in a completely separate account in a completely separate bank from the bank I use to pay my expenses and all that stuff. And so I keep all that in a completely separate account that I don't touch. And that money just builds up. So, but the other thing too is that spending it on a Queen Mary experience like the way you like instead. On the Queen Mary currently, they do not sell that experience. If you've seen my recent Queen Mary update video, I actually had 3 suggestions to the city of Long Beach about how to make the Queen Mary into a well-rounded ocean liner experience. the reason why I suggested it is because they don't currently do that. So no, I would not spend that money on the Queen Mary for a full experience because they don't offer that. So, but even if they did, I wouldn't use the funds I'm saving for Europe on that, because then I'll never be able to go to Europe if I'm spending that money. So, let's see. Okay, that can't be right. ShipGeek says there's another ad. That's not possible. That's too quick for YouTube. Yeah, other people are saying that they're not seeing ads. So why are you getting ads every 3 minutes? That's not possible. There must be something. ShipGeek, why don't you refresh the page? Because there's probably something like a glitch happening with your page or something. Hey, Historic Ships. Oh, you gotta go. Okay, well, I'll see you later, Historic Ships. I better get going soon, too, anyway. It's already 6 p.m. Oh, wow. YouTube is using a new algorithm to block the ad blocker plugins. Wow. Dino DeSantis says, could the Queen Mary race the Queen Mary 2 and win? If the Queen Mary had not been retired and was still in service, yes, the original Queen Mary, with her original technology, could win a race with the Queen Mary 2. And the reason why is because the Queen Mary was built to go a maximum speed of 32.84 knots. The Queen Mary 2 was built to go a maximum speed of about 30.5 knots. So yes, the original Queen Mary would definitely beat the Queen Mary 2 in a race. Let's see. Okay, I'm all caught up. Let's see. Animation, hello, I'm doing great. I'm a little tired, and I'm about ready to end this live stream because I can smell the food cooking, and I'm getting hungry again. Veronica says, would you ever travel on the Queen Mary 2? Yes, actually, I was just talking about my Europe trip, my trip to the UK and to Paris. That will be by going aboard the Queen Mary 2. So the idea, the whole plan, is to take the Queen Mary 2 from New York to Southampton, spend about a week in the UK, and then spend almost a week in Paris, and then come back to the United States aboard the Queen Mary 2. So getting across the Atlantic both times will be on the Queen Mary 2. That's one thing I'm really, really, really excited for. So yes, definitely. Okay. Alright everyone, I am going to get going now because it is time. It's been well over 2 hours. But yes, look forward this Friday to my brand new, fully revamped 15 extra minutes of information video about Queen Mary during World War II. It'll be a really cool video, probably a tearjerker for sure. So yeah, be prepared for that on Friday. And yeah, I will see you guys all for the next tea time, which will be Wednesday of next week. This Sunday, I will be live streaming my train layout from the office on Sunday. So yeah, tea time next is next Wednesday. Alright folks, thank you all for joining me, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.